Hey everyone, welcome again to another episode of Disability Landscape. I'm Charlie Bros, and today with me is my co-host, Tricia Carlberg. Tricia, you brought us an author here today who has kind of an interesting story, much like many of us with disabilities. Why don't you introduce them, please?
Yeah, today we have Michael Kiel. I was introduced to Michael by a colleague of mine who's going to be doing his audiobook by the name of, his name is Austin. And I'm into writing myself. So I met Austin because we do Shut Up and Write. And that's just a workshop to help us get writing every day. Anyway, Michael is here from Pennsylvania and he wants to talk about Challenge the Moment, which is a memoir. And this book describes Michael Kiel's experience becoming paralyzed from the neck down when he was 19 years old, and his perspective on life before the incident, during, and after his spinal cord injury. So it's so great to have you, Michael.
Well, thanks for having me. This is a pretty cool opportunity. I appreciate the chance to talk to everyone.
Yeah, totally. So Michael, do you want to talk about what inspired you to write this book?
Well, the biggest inspiration or the biggest motivation was probably my family and friends who were pretty relentless in saying that I have to write. I've been writing for a while. That's been one of my coping mechanisms for probably 20 years. Before I got shot, I played rugby and I lifted weights. When I get upset or I needed to, vent some steam, I banged into other people or banged into weights, things like that. And when I couldn't do that any longer, I had to find another method of getting what's in out. And so I started writing, and some of that stuff I shared with family and friends, and they thought it was really good and wanted me to put it together. So I eventually did.
That's so awesome. And how do you think your book will help others with disabilities or people in the spinal cord injury category?
Well, there's a lot of humor in it. There's a lot of perseverance. There's a lot of love and support. There's a lot of family and friends, and there's a lot of unique looking at obstacles, looking at situations in a unique fashion. The book is a little bit more about, all right, how do I, as opposed to, oh crap, instead of getting stuck, it's try to find a way through the obstacle or through the haze.
Can you give an example of that?
What's that?
Can you give an example of that? How do you get through the haze?
One of the biggest things I use are family and friends and laughter and jokes and humor. I think I put it in the book somewhere that the first two questions I always have to ask if I'm going someplace with my friends is, can I get in? Are there any steps? And my friends would always answer yes to the first one because the second one didn't matter. It was either a good story or a good time or both. So even if there's some kind of obstacle to get in, it would be, story worthy and, funny in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah, totally. Have there been just things that you found yourself not being able to get into? Obviously, there's some, but I suppose lately it's a little bit easier with Zoom and everything.
Oh yeah, the technology makes life a lot more connected, a whole lot easier to reach other people. But there have always been places that there's just no way around it. There's an entire flight of steps, and I've got one person with me that's that's sitting in a 400-pound chair. That's not happening. Although, like in college, I had fraternity brothers carrying me and a 400-pound chair up and down basement steps constantly for parties or get-togethers, or we went up to Buffalo State, New York, to initiate a whole nother chapter of our fraternity. It was just a couple of weeks or so after I got home from rehab, and the elevator was locked. We couldn't get into it. So those guys, one on each corner, four guys, carried this chair, me in it, up 3 flights of steps up to the 3rd floor of a building on campus where the initiation was.
That's just amazing, Michael.
I've been hoofed and dragged and lugged all over the place.
Yeah, that just reminds me too of an instance when I broke my leg when I was like 13 or 14, and I was still doing dance recitals at that time, and my mom insisted that I go to the dance recital, not to dance, but to get my award. And they're like, come up on stage. And I'm like, really? Let's go on stage and at Orchestra Hall in front of everybody and in my body cast. That sounds like fun. But yeah, you just do it because you want to be with people and in the moment and things like that. And I think that's an inspiration to all of us to, obstacles shouldn't stand in our way, like so that we can get out there and do things, I guess. I like that.
I've always described that as like a vicious circle. Like in my world, I've got friends and family, people around me that just feed me, don't want to do more, and to push boundaries, push the envelope, and try to find ways in and around and through stuff. And the more they do that, the more stuff I want to do, the more I want to accomplish. And the more I accomplish, the more stuff I do, the more they support me, and the more they get creative in finding ways to help me do that. So that's a vicious circle that really, propels me forward. Unfortunately, it can work the other way too. If someone doesn't have anyone around them, or the people around them aren't supportive, they can spiral the other way, straight down, which is dangerous.
Yeah, I totally see that. Can you think of any like outdoor adventures that you've been in where it's been like, oh man, this could be a challenge?
Oh, the number of muddy fields and things that I've been drugged through and came across. And I'll give you a great example. My fraternity used to have like an annual hay ride. We would rent a farm for one of the initiations and have just 3 or 4 other fraternities and sororities and hundreds of college kids and tons of kegs. And the farmer would take a tractor and give hay rides. Well, one year they had moved the location of where the bonfire and everyone sat around. And when I got onto the farm, they told me it was across that creek, up that path, and through the field. So I've got a lowered floor minivan that I took across a creek, up a muddy path, and through a field. We got it there.
Wow. That'll do
I
it.
had to go to my van vendor the next week because the ramp wasn't working quite all that well. So we had to tighten a few things up and clean a few things off, but he was amused too. So
Yeah, it's good to be an amusement of other people. Charlie, you got a question?
Yeah, Michael, you talked about the rehab that you went through. It was about 4 months following the incident. And you were able to continue school and get your bachelor's degree and go on and get a master's degree. You must have had a really good or really dependable support system with family and friends to kind of ease you through this process. How did that work out?
Absolutely. I come from a really big family to start with. My mother's got 5 brothers and sisters. My dad's got 9 brothers and sisters. I've probably, between both families, I've probably got 45 or so, 45 pushing 50 first cousins, not to mention all their kids and everything now. And all my fraternity brothers, the guys I played rugby with, my friends from high school, they're all just ever present around all the time. So a really good example of that, the type of support they gave me, is when I got shot in April, at the end of that semester. My professors gave me all the grades I had without taking finals, so that term counted. Spent 2 months in ICU, 2 months in rehab in Atlanta. And when I got home, it was about halfway through August. A day and a half after I got home from rehab, got home on a Wednesday night. Friday, my big brother in my fraternity and one of the guys I pledged with came up, threw me in the front of my dad's truck, threw my chair in the back because I didn't have a van yet. I was even in a loaner wheelchair. I didn't even have my own wheelchair yet. And they drove me back down to campus, put me back together. And since I had actually had that spring term count, as far as the campus knew, I was still completely enrolled. They were just waiting for me to schedule classes. So day and a half out of rehab, I'm there with Pete and Jeffrey signing up for a few classes, and I was back in school that fall with fraternity brothers or family members or whoever every day. Throw me in front of a truck, throw the chair in the back, drive me down to campus, help me get around if I needed it, until I got an accessible vehicle, and then I had someone drive that until I got attendant care in place, and then someone could take the reins from there. But that segue happened pretty quickly.
Okay. You talked about the fraternity life. Did they go ahead and I know you talked about getting carried up and down the stairs, but for the main part of the building, did they go ahead and make arrangements for a wheelchair for you, or was it already fairly accessible building?
You mean on campus? At that point, Penn State Altoona, there was maybe a half a dozen buildings, and I think only 2 or 3 of them were 2-story, including the library. The library already had an elevator.
Okay.
No, there was only one other building that was 2 stories, and there wasn't an elevator. So they just moved the class. If I had a class, they just moved it to the first floor. They made accessibility and accommodations really easy, because when I went to the student services and said, I'm brand new to this, being in a wheelchair, I can't get to here, I can't get that, they would look at me and say, we've never dealt with that, but let's figure out a way. And they would brainstorm and work with me, and we'd figure it out together.
So I'm presuming then that the Altoona campus is where you continued. It sounds like a relatively small campus, and they don't have a lot of, well, at the time, a lot of contact with people with disabilities as students. And this was, relatively soon after the ADA was passed. So you kind of led the way for them to learn how to deal with students with disabilities. Do you consider that correct?
I would be flattered if someone considered that, but I hope I helped. The student services portion that helped with that was phenomenal, because number one, they didn't know much, neither did I, but they didn't bat an eye at saying, nope, we don't know what, we've never dealt with that, we don't know what that is, but we'll figure out a way. They did. So since that it has expanded. There's a lot more buildings there's a lot more stuff, but it's a whole lot more accessible now too. Of course, it's been years since the ADA, but it's evolved, and it's a whole lot more accessible now too.
Well, yeah, and currently many campuses have someone on board that deal with just accessibility issues for students with issues. And, that's a big step forward for us. You now have, a master's in rehab counseling. Was that ever going to, has your disability, your injury, fed into, these are the kind of people I want to help and service now?
It did. That drove the direction of my career significantly. When I got accepted into Penn State, I was accepted for architectural engineering, which is about as concrete as you can get. And over the next 2 years, I bounced around through accounting and astronomy and meteorology. I've got acting credits and dancing credits. I've got all kinds of stuff I bounced around through. Teaching, I was going to be a teacher for a while, but the semester I got shot, I ended up switching over to psychology, and I really liked psychology, and that stuck. When I went back after I got hurt, I continued in psychology, and it's at that point I think that having a disability and my life experiences sort of drove me to, all right, what exactly do you want to do with psychology? I want to work with other people that may have run into some of the same things that I've run into.
Okay. And pre-injury, you were athletic, you played rugby, all that kind of thing. Are you able or willing to take us through what happened that night in April? What
Sure.
caused, the injury?
Well, it's not a real
His
long.
question, I'm sorry.
It's not. Yeah, it's not a real long story. It was about 4 o'clock in the morning. I stopped at a convenience store. There was a guy outside acting like a fool, and I was 19 and not a whole lot smarter or better. And we got into an argument and exchanged a few words. And next thing you knew, he pulled out a gun and point blank side of the neck. And don't remember anything else after that.
Wow.
Wow. That's
So,
crazy.
yeah, that's nothing ever good happens after 2 a.m.
That's my grandmother used to always say, nothing good. I think she always said nothing good happens after midnight, but yeah.
Well, you have to have time to get home from the bar, so we'll
Yes.
leave the 2 o'clock. Well, it sounds like, yeah, you've really found your niche in what you're doing in life. Is it easier for people coming to you for rehab counseling um, to put them at ease that you have a disability as well and can kind of really understand their situation?
Well, I would first say that everyone's individual experience is so different and so unique. I've never ever said to someone, "I know what you're feeling." So
Sure.
I think having a disability, especially the kind of disability I have, gives me a really unique insight into a couple different things, like being paralyzed or using a power wheelchair or having to create unique assistive technology. But as far as that giving me a leg up or an advantage to work with someone with a disability, there have been times when it's been really valuable, and I've clicked with someone really well because of that. But there's other times where it's been a little bit of a hindrance because someone may have assumed or thought that I was just going to automatically take a position of, yeah, I know what you feel, and
Sure.
not value what their thoughts were. For whatever reason, we just didn't click as well. So
Mhm.
I think at times it has played a valuable role, and other times it's not.
Okay. Trish?
Yeah, I think that's great that that you are in that role, because more people are going to be able to see somebody with spinal cord injury and understand that they're still able to do a job and still provide a service to the community, and they're just going to be inspired. I think that's so great. One of the questions too I had is that you've done talks for different organizations, schools, and so forth. Um, what has been like the reaction from individuals when they hear your talk or things like that?
Well, I always tell them I don't do real well talking at people. So I usually talk for a little bit, and then I ask them to talk with me so I can, ask them questions or have them ask me questions so we can go back and forth and debate topics or discuss topics or have a conversation. Because I always say I get bored easy and I'm amused easy. So you might not want me just tangentially, going off on whatever direction. But I also incorporate a lot of humor whenever I give talks. I got a great example. I just gave one to a nursing class. It was last Monday. And after it was over, I come out in the hallway. One of the young women was standing there with a younger guy who said, "Hey, how are you?" I said, "Good, how are you?" And he said, "I was in the physical therapy class you just talked to a couple weeks ago. Did you get these guys with the prank about the magnets in your head, in your chair?" I said, "No, they answered the question quicker than you guys." So I had convinced his class that there were magnets sewn into my skull, and that's how the chair got propelled to across the floors if these magnets activated. Because when I asked the class if they could guess how the chair was moving, they got real quiet, and when they didn't answer, I made something up. So the nursing class answered a lot quicker, so it was a back and forth a lot quicker.
I can see how that joke could be used at the airport too, or just any kind of place. That's real great. I love that. And then I think you've also done like just advocacy in Pennsylvania, like with the commerce and the disability kind of advocacy there is, can you talk a little bit about that? Like with the State Department or anything?
Sure. I'm on a board of directors for OVR's state board, which is Pennsylvania's version of vocational rehab. And I think that board is probably one of the most important things we have in this state. Well, I shouldn't say the board is, that program. The idea of getting people employed is the most important thing, one of the most important things we have in this state, in my area.
Sure.
I think it applies to other states too, but I don't live in other states, so I'm just talking about Pennsylvania. I think the idea of getting someone a job is the great equalizer. I mean, if you can get someone where they're doing part of the heavy lifting and then getting the reward, the paycheck reward for that, it puts them at a seat at the table and gives them the accountability, the responsibility, along with all the freedoms and privileges and equality that goes along with it. I think it's just the job is a great equalizer.
And what is it called again? OVR? What does that stand for?
Yeah, it's the Office of Vocational Rehabilitation. Most states just have some version of vocational rehabilitation. It's just usually a couple different letters in there, but it's all revolves around voc rehab.
Yeah. Well, that's tremendous work. We've interviewed a lot of organizations that work with getting people in the disabled community jobs and so forth. And it's great to hear that Pennsylvania's got that in place as well. Can you talk a little bit about another prank that you've done just to humor our audience?
All right, sure. Do you want a quick one or an involved one?
Yeah, an involved one.
An involved one. Okay. So I went up to the bar one night to meet a couple buddies, and we were up there for quite a while. And someone wanted to do a shot of tequila, and I don't really like tequila, but a buddy of mine, Chris, and this story is in the book, but this buddy of mine cannot stand tequila. Like he'll throw up if he smells it, kind of thing. Like can't stand tequila. So I decided we should go outside and race around the block. He's not in a wheelchair. I think I'm very big power chair. So we should race around the block, and the loser has to do a shot of tequila, which this is probably about 1 o'clock in the morning when all really good ideas hit.
Of course.
So we go outside, and we apparently were talking about this rather loudly because we got a crowd follow us. So we get outside, and he's stretching and he's trying to get livered up and yelling at the other guys in the crowd, saying, I've followed that chair in my truck. I know how fast it is. So we were going to go at opposite directions so we could check to make sure the other one wasn't cheating.
Mm-hmm.
So he took off one direction. I took off the other. We were going to go around past each other behind the building. And then the last one back to the front door had to do a shot of tequila. So he took off one direction. I took off the other. And I turned around and I looked and I watched him go around the corner. And I looked at the crowd who was all looking at me like with this question in their face. And I said, it's pretty cold out here. I think I'll just do the shot. And I went inside and waited the 10 minutes until he ran the whole way around the block and came back in huffing and puffing. And he got in through the door. I said, you win.
Oh my gosh, that was genius. I love that. Oh my gosh. Well, I think that was all the questions that I have today. Charlie, do you have any other ones?
Nope, actually I don't. So I think it's time to wrap it up, but I want to thank Michael Kiel and Tricia Karlberg for being with us today. Michael, once more for our audience, the book, where they can get it, and do we know when the audiobook is going to be available?
Challenge the Moment. It's available on Amazon in both Kindle and paperback. The audiobook is being created as we speak. Austin Case signed on to produce and narrate it. He just sent me the 9th chapter. Yeah, I think the 9th chapter. So he's about 20% of the way through. He's got it all recorded, and right now he's editing it, and we're double checking to make sure that names and places are pronounced right, things like that. I listened for those first couple chapters, and I'm digging it. I think he's doing a really cool job. So I can't wait till it comes out.
Yeah.
The target,
Absolutely.
the target would probably be within the next couple weeks, maybe, definitely before the end of May.
Wow, that turns around pretty quick then.
I hope
It
so.
does. All right. Well, Michael, again, thank you for joining us today. It's great. Stay warm and comfortable out there in Pennsylvania. I know you guys have some of the weather we send that way. So
The next couple days are supposed to be in the high 70s, so I'm digging it.
I think I'm coming your direction. We can't get out of the 60s.
Yeah, we've got a great deck back here that's always made for a happy hour.
There you go. There you go. Again, Michael Kiel, Tricia Karlberg. This has been a great interview. My name is Charlie Bros, and you've been watching Disability Landscape. Thank you.